Hey there, it is Jordan Chariton live, status coup, the people's mic. It is Tuesday, August 20th, the second night of the Democratic National Convention there in Chicago. I am live in my studio, but we are on the ground in Chicago, where John Farina was live for us for 6 hours straight yesterday, covering protests on the ground. He will be live again right after this mega show. But tonight kicks off a 3-day, what I would like to call a mega marathon called the People's Mic. While the Democratic Party puts on, I believe, a theatrical performance in the United Center, we're going to try to cover some reality here. So tonight we have great guests, Nina Turner, who you all know. Ran Bernie Sanders, co-chair of Bernie Sanders campaign in 2020, former Ohio state senator. Also have Marianne Williamson. You might not know it from the corporate media, but she ran for president in 2024 and was unfortunately blacked out mostly by the media, but she ran in the Democratic primary. We also are going to have Ryan Grimm of Drop Site News. We're also going to have, I guess you can call it a debate with folks from Our Revolution, as well as Progressive Democrats from America, because I want to hear from them. What's the road forward? A lot of people are tired working within the Democratic Party, but open to hearing their thoughts. We're also going to be talking a lot of important topics that are really being, barely covered at the convention. Immigration, the climate inferno. We're definitely going to be covering the youth vote. Tomorrow night, we're going to have more of a party on independence, third parties. And the last night, Thursday, we're going to try for some comedy. A lot of serious issues going on, a lot of misery, doom, corruption. So Thursday, we'll have some comedic relief and Cornel West. But tonight, like I said, just so you know, in the convention hall, former President Obama is going to be speaking. Bernie Sanders is going to be speaking, among others. And like I said, in addition to our guests, right after this broadcast, which please smash that like button, share this live stream, support as best you can, share it everywhere. Right after this at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central, we are going to be going live as John Farina is on the ground for us. He's going to be covering protests outside of the Israeli consulate in Chicago. You might not know it from the inside of the DNC convention, but there are potentially tens of thousands of protesters this week. Yesterday, thousands in the street demanding a ceasefire and justice for Gaza. So we're definitely going to cover that tonight. But most importantly, if you're new to Status Coup, subscribe to this channel. We just passed 200,000, but we want to keep trucking along. And definitely, if you can, support us as a Status Coup member. We are, as far as I know, the only independent progressive outlet routinely on the road covering the stories the corporate media cannot be bothered to cover. With that said, I'm very honored to be joined. Our first guest, Nina Turner. She was a former Ohio state senator, ran Bernie Sanders campaign in 2020. Hell, she basically moved to South Carolina for Bernie Sanders and did a terrific job and is still very active in the progressive movement. Nina, how are you doing today?
Good to join you, Jordan.
Thank you. And thank you for joining me for my book launch last week in Cleveland. So that was very nice. I wanted to start with a clip from last night because, if you look at the media reaction, AOC was kind of the star of the DNC convention. I want to play a clip from her speech last night.
We have a chance to elect a president who is for the middle class because she is from the middle class. She understands the urgency of rent checks and groceries and prescriptions. She is as committed to our reproductive and civil rights as she is to taking on corporate greed. And she is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home. tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day to lift working people out from under the boots that breathe, trampling on our way of life.
So, not trying to get you in trouble, as you know, because obviously you
I
are.
doubt that, Jordan. You always trying to get me in trouble. I want our
Well,
viewers.
first, I do need to start. I mean, just factually, I really don't know what AOC meant by the vice president has been working tirelessly on a ceasefire in Gaza. I mean, she has expressed more sympathy for the Palestinians, but obviously Biden is the president and he's running the show. What were your thoughts on that? Because I don't. That seemed kind of hollow to me.
Yeah, over the top. So Jordan, I'm getting a little distracted by the comments coming in here, but I want to thank Schultze. Said I was looking good. Let me say to Tyler, hello, Tyler. So many people. So anyway, back to what you asked me. I was in the hall. I am a member of the Ohio delegation of the DNC. Ended my 8 years right now. This will be it for me. I can't stand it anymore. That was over the top. You know, it's one thing to say that as somebody in the first chair. I mean, the vice president has softened the rhetoric. Her rhetoric has been different than the current president, but it's a stretch. It's more than a stretch to say that she's been working tirelessly to do that. Since she started running for president, since then. I mean, you and I mean, you're on the ground all the time. I'm talking to people all the time, and that's not the feeling. I talked to some leaders of the uncommitted movement last night, and they're trying. Some people are pushing on the inside, as you laid out. There are many pro-peace, pro-humanitarian protesters on the ground in Chicago, putting their bodies on the front line. You don't have to lie to people or be over the top, because that was just a flat out lie. So yeah, Jordan is trying to get me in trouble. I can't abide by this. You know, it's bittersweet. I had a reporter ask me yesterday to describe the feeling in there. There are a lot of people who are excited. It's palpable. The current president is out. You got the vice president in, and some people really feel good about that. And that's okay. I'm not going to rain on their parade. But Jordan, we don't have to exaggerate, and we don't have to borderline lie. It would be different if she said that this vice president, as she is running for president, plans to center the pain of Palestinians in a way that has not been done under the current administration. That would be acceptable. But to say tirelessly day and night while you got 40,000 people dead, while you got millions of people living in famine, where you got babies whose heads are being blown off and parents who have to bury their children first, which is out of the order of the way Mother Nature usually works. The fact that the Democratic Party has such a cavalier attitude towards the pain of our Palestinian sisters and brothers and family and friends. It is obvious that that is the case. And it just pains me that people feel like they got to get up there and lie.
Right. And I'd love your thoughts, because it's not your first rodeo, not my first rodeo. And a lot of these conventions, frankly, campaigns are more marketing and branding exercises than substance. But AOC, it was a good speech, but she really tried to portray Kamala Harris as a fighter for the people, champion of the working class, et cetera, et cetera. It's not for me to tell people who to vote for. Trump is certainly none of those things.
Right.
But you just mentioned don't lie to people. And I mean, I know her record. I don't really know what in her record is fighting for the working class. Biden, we can be honest, has done some good things. It's not all horrendous. And you have to give her credit for those things too. But I don't know, as a senator or as attorney general of California, or now as vice president, I don't know what AOC was referring to. This is not, I'm not asking you to take a piñata to Vice President Harris, but it seems more like that was a speech rather than her actual record.
Yeah, I mean, inquiring minds want to know. So if there's a record out there, because elected officials do many things sometimes that people don't know. I know in my active elective service, certainly I've done many things that people may not necessarily be aware of. And Jordan, I want to say, she said middle class and not working class, and some of our viewers are really pointing that out. It is imperative that we talk about working class people, poor people, and the Democratic Party has proven itself campaign after campaign too afraid to say the word poor or too afraid to say the word working class. The middle class barely exists. I know everybody wants to say that they're in the middle class, but when you talk to people on the ground, they are feeling the pain. 60% of 60% of Americans have said that they are living paycheck to paycheck. 50% of renters say that they can't make rent. We have allowed corporations to buy up real estate, for example, driving up rents in this country, something that is an abomination, and that it will take the federal government to stop this siege on the property so that people will be able to afford to live. So we can go on and on. So Jordan, if there are some things that the vice president has done pointedly for working class people, then we should know that record. No, I'm not going to take a pinata to her. I'm actually out there, and I want to encourage our viewers to read some of my Newsweek editorials, and they don't always have to agree. Sometimes you're going to say ouch, and sometimes you're going to say amen. It doesn't matter to me. I just want people to think. And what I am trying to assert here is that the progressive wing of the party was never going to get our candidate. We had our candidate run twice, and the neoliberals of the Democratic Party, Jordan, as you know, and our viewers know, stopped him both times. So there was no way on God's green earth that they was on 4 months going to let progressives have a candidate. We certainly played a role in getting Governor Walz. You know, it was between Walz and Beshear for me, out of the people that she had to choose from, because it was a narrow list that she had to choose from. Let's tell the truth. We tell the truth in the independent media. And out of that narrow list, those two rose to the top for me. Beshear being the governor of Kentucky, Walz the governor of Minnesota. Glad that she picked him. So Jordan, I've been trying to frame this, much to the chagrin of some progressives, as an opportunity. And I really want to believe that in my heart, that once she is in the first chair, she will do something differently than what the Biden-Harris, when you're the vice president, you got to roll with the president most of the time. You have to. That's the nature of the job. In first chair, though, what I want to know, will she do something differently? People can have a cavalier attitude about the carnage that is happening in Gaza, but damn, Jordan, but by the grace of God, that could be any of us. And this convention is bittersweet in that I don't understand why the Democrats won't just flat out say, embargo on bomb, we're not sending you no more, and we need a permanent ceasefire. That's where the majority of the Democrats are if they want to look at this electorally, and that is where the majority of the American people are. But we can't get these feckless politicians. And just one more point, Jordan. If people, if all of us could imagine being in the middle of the ocean and need somebody to come save us, and I don't want this for anybody. But I just want you to imagine. That's why I'm trying to get the visual. If you were dying, like drowning in the middle of the ocean, do you want people to have to do focus groups before they try to come and get you? Do you want them to run it past their owner donors before they come out to save you? Do you want them to figure out, is it politically correct to come and save you? Do you need them to figure out whether your life is worth being saved? Or do you want somebody who will throw caution to the wind and who will radically come out there no matter what nobody else has to say and come and save your life? That is the situation that our sisters and brothers in Gaza are facing right now. That is the situation of our sisters and brothers in the Sudan. And damn it, Jordan, that is the situation of far too Americans in this country. So don't get up there and lie, Democrats. Just say you understand the assignment now and you're going to do better. Jordan, I think people would have more respect if we had leaders who would say that. And the person who got the closest to it last night was Reverend Warnock.
Absolutely. Leading into the next question, I want to read this statistic because I kind of think it says it all. From 1970 to 2018, so we're basically talking 50 years, the share of aggregate income going to the middle class households fell from 62 to 43%. Over the same period, the share held by upper income households increased from 29 to 48%. And then you have the chart that we've all seen with that red line just skyrocketing up. And that's all the money, all the wealth going, to Wall Street and all the special interests and Jeff Bezos and the Waltons and et cetera, et cetera. So my question is, this is we're on a decade journey from 2016 now to almost 10 years. A lot of people, as you've seen, in a fractured left-wing progressive movement are just tired of trying to work within this party. And they kind of see it as a fool's errand, definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over. Some people, I believe, just want to burn it down without the number to the fire department. But
Right.
part of what I want to do with these shows is a roadmap forward. What do you think is the roadmap forward? Because a lot of people say, well, I held my nose in 2020 and, there were some good things, but structurally nothing has changed for me. I don't want to keep holding my nose. But they see third party as a struggle, and they see kind of stop signs every path they take. What's your message for the progressive movement? Because right now it's a lot of silos and people on their own islands and doing their own thing.
Well, the fight for justice is always going to be a struggle, Jordan. So that's the first thing we have to resign ourselves to. We have to have the intestinal fortitude to know that when you are fighting for justice, it will always be a struggle. And for every gain that any generation of freedom fighters have won, there will be on the opposite end of that. We learned in science, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Unfortunately, there will be an opposite force that will continue to try to push us back. That force is mainly political. It's not just Republicans. We see it in the Democratic Party itself. So the first thing that progressives have to do is ready ourselves to know that it will always, and I mean always, be a fight, and it is a generational fight. And each generation passes the baton to the next to really advance, keep the lead and advance the lead. And then Brother Killer Mike said it the best. I mean, we got a plot, plan, strategize, mobilize, plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize every single time on every single issue. Hello, somebody. It's never going to end. And justice is a journey. It's never a destination. We need to be more organized. We need to play chess instead of checkers. We need to stop all the damn infighting, right? Because while we're infighting, the other side is winning because they've been at it longer than we have. We have got to find those top 3 or 10 things that we agree on and stick to it. We got to hold people accountable. We have to make a demand. I know some people are saying the party supports genocide. I mean, yeah, it's proven itself to do that. I will tell the truth right now. I mean, the Democratic Party has not done anything, and neither has the Republicans, Jordan. Let's not let them off the hook either. Neither party has done anything to stop this carnage. They playing in our face. And so that is why it's even more important for the progressive wing of this party, if you choose to stay in it, to continue to push. Progressive Democrats of America are trying their best to be the ones, the Working Families Party, maybe between those two entities, certainly Our Revolution. But we have some spectacular organizations that are rooted PDA. As many of us know, they're celebrating, their 20 years. We have some infrastructure there. We just need the majority of progressive organizations and movement leaders to come together on at least 3 issues that we will stay together on and not be divided, and hold and push the line no matter what. The labor movement is another incredible space where we can seek to build solidarity, hence my organization, We Are Somebody. So Jordan, we have the apparatus to do it. It's whether or not we have the willingness and the discipline to do what we know is necessary. And I do firmly believe that we can draw upon the work, just put some 21st century on it, but draw upon the 20th century justice and liberation struggle of the civil rights movement itself. We forget that the March on Washington, it was not necessarily a civil right. It was civil rights was part of it, but it was jobs and freedom. Don't forget that. And so I see an incredible opportunity between labor and civil rights. If we could thread that needle together and put some 21st century on it, there's nothing that we cannot accomplish. I do understand people are getting weary. Hell, I get weary sometimes too. I just want to say, as one of the good books says, don't get weary in well doing. I know it is incredibly hard. We all have a role to play, and not that I'm the best person to give. And yeah, AIPAC is a threat. Hell, all of these dark money groups are a threat. Don't get me started on that. I just feel like we need to recognize all of us have a role to play on the field. And if we were a football team, for example, somebody's the quarterback, somebody's the cornerback, somebody's the running back, somebody's the kicker. We all have a role on the field to play. And if every player is playing their role, no matter what it is, their position, then that is how the team wins. And for me, the progressive movement has been so immature. I mean, we're young. It was brought about, it was hastened, the 21st century version of a progressive movement was definitely ushered in by the candidacy of Senator Bernard Sanders. We are young. We cannot continue to base the movement on one personality, whether that personality is Senator Sanders or whether that personality is Senator Nina Turner. We do need leaders, though, that will take the message on the inside, but really the fight is on the outside.
And my last question, and I named this segment Hell Oh Somebody, because you call yourself a freedom fighting hellraiser.
I do.
I'm not looking for a soundbite, but I'm just going to ask directly. Holding people accountable would include progressives who a lot of us, a lot of people watching knocked on doors for, etc. Whether it's AOC, other squad members, hell, Bernie himself. They might share our values, but if they are not going to push aggressively enough, if they're not going to leverage votes, if it seems that, they might be working a little longer term strategy, do you believe that they should be held accountable too, whether it be primaries, protesting outside their offices? I believe we cannot be holding people up as heroes. Got to hold everybody accountable. I'm not just AOC, but all of them that are running on Medicare for all progressives. If they're not being aggressive enough, if they are not bringing the ruckus to the Democratic Party, should they be held accountable?
Yeah, everybody needs to be held accountable. Those of us who hold elected titles and are supposed to do the bidding of the people absolutely are supposed to be held accountable. And Jordan, let me digress a little bit. I see some sexism permeating in this thread. And so I just want to say to anybody, you might not like certain politicians, but it's totally unacceptable to say that Vice President Harris laid on her back. You
Amen.
are a fool, okay? And I'm about to say some other 4-letter words, but I'm keeping myself from saying it. You might not like her politics, but that is out of line. It's out of line. And see, our movement can't accept that. And I don't even know if this person's part of the movement or whatever, because I know we got frenemies in here too. That is beyond the pale, Jordan. And I'm about to start cussing here. It's a damn shame. Don't do that. Just stay on the policy. Stay out of people's personal lives.
I agree.
Okay, back to what you had to say, Jordan. Everybody should be held accountable. Everybody. And I don't want us to fall so in love with politicians that we don't hold them accountable. See, that's what I don't do. I don't worship the Democratic Party. I'm in it, but not of it. I worship God. I am a faith woman, as you know, Jordan. But I serve the people. So no, nobody is beyond being held accountable. That is how we get movement. I'll never forget. And let me just give people a little bit of a history lesson, but I want them to go and do some more research. That even with FDR, the New Deal, and we know that the New Deal left out Black people. Okay, FDR was not a perfect president. Nobody is perfect. He moved this nation, though, in ways that somebody of his wealth, if they didn't have that kind of consciousness, if they didn't have Eleanor Roosevelt, people in his ear like that, he may not have done it. He was forced to do those things. And Asa Philip Randolph went to the president to talk about desegregating the armed forces, to talk about making sure that Black people could get some of those federal military jobs. And basically, FDR told him, make him do it. Make me do it. And Asa Philip Randolph, one of the greatest unionists of the 20th century, you guys need to read about him. He is the author of the march. He first decided to organize a march on Washington in the 40s. And because World War II was raging, FDR didn't want that smoke. So even though Asa Philip Randolph did not get everything he asked for, he got more than what he would have gotten had he not made a demand. See, he wasn't enamored by having a conversation with the president. He didn't get seduced by wanting to go to a damn Christmas party and be on the list. He said, these are the things that I need. And Mr. President, I need you to do them. FDR said, you got to make me do them. He said, okay, Mr. President, I got you. I tell you what we're going to do. 100,000 Black people going to march on Washington. That was powerful, Jordan. So we need more leaders who care. I often say titles are good, but purpose is better. We need more purpose-driven people, whether they are actively elected or not. But people who hold the people's power, you absolutely have a right to challenge them. That don't mean you don't like them personally. This business. And voting is a transaction. And we, the people, should get something in return materially for our vote to uplift and strengthen the social contract. I'm tired of these politicians being called superstars and all that. No, the hell they are. They are supposed to be serving the people. And when the people we support are no longer serving us, we need to have a conversation with them. And if that doesn't move them, then damn it, there has to be a consequence. One consequence is, primary. Another consequence, hey, making sure they don't get back. But they're not just going to do it because it's the right thing to do. Some people do, but mainly they're going to do it because they're forced to do it. We are that force. So stop falling in love with these people.
Absolutely. And we going to see anything from you in the near future in the political arena, or you're kind of retired?
Jordan, you cannot help yourself, can you? I can't tell you how many people have stopped me at that United Center asking me to run again. Am I going to run again? I got people asking me to go move to California, come to Chariton, run in Cleveland, run for Congress again. We will see. But I will say some of and you were on this journey with me, Jordan, and some of the people on here know how painful it was to be maligned in the way Ohio 11th was the canary in the coal mine for what just happened to both Congress members Bowman and also Congresswoman Cori Bush. It was definitely painful, no doubt about it. When you are the first, the shots and arrows come at you. I do want people to know that there are other ways to really move the needle for justice, and I'm just doing some soul searching with myself as to whether or not that means I have to be actively elected again. Some of the people we admire the most are people who never held elected office, like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., like Minister Malcolm X, even though Eugene Debs did run and they locked him up, that's a whole nother history lesson, but like Eugene Debs, like Mother Jones, and so many others. I'm leaving out some folks and I understand that. So, Jordan, I'm just trying to figure out what is my best positioning, what is my highest and best use right now. I am not ruling out that I will run. I know 2028 is coming. So I got people saying 2028, here we come. Yeah, 2028 is coming one way or another. But I am doing a lot of soul searching, regardless of whether I ever run again. I just want people to know that I will continue to be on the front lines. And I understand people might not always agree with what I say. They might not always agree with my tactics. I am not asking people to be blindly loyal. I just want people to wake up, Jordan, and to think for themselves, to be critical thinkers. That's what I want.
Thank you very much for taking the time. And I know you're in Chicago, so raise
I
hell
am
there.
on my way back. I am a delegate, as I said, my last hurrah. So I am going to go over there. I know you got to jump to other people. People saying that voting for Dr. West is a waste of time. Hell to the no, it is not. Stop doing that. People have a right to vote for whoever they want to. This is the United States of America. When people do that kind of stuff, you fall into a trap. Jill Stein has a right to run. Dr. Cornel West has a right to run. RFK Jr. has a right to run. Marianne Williamson, over and over again, name. This is America, and people should have a right to run. So those who feel like they're not getting what they need from the duopoly, you have some other choices. Jordan, and I know there's some trolls in here too. I know there are people that's trying to provoke and stoke, but I want
that's how you know you're growing, when the trolls come.
Absolutely. But I don't want people to get caught up in some of this food and this nonsense. So much love for you, Jordan, to Jay. To the entire team that put this on and gave space for progressive voices. I truly, truly do appreciate you all. And I can't wait until next time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
You too.
So we are really rearing to go here. We got almost 400 watching. So smash that like button, share this live stream. Make sure you are supporting us if you can. We just got such a generous gift of 10 Status Coup memberships. Thank you, Emily. She gifted 10 Status Coup memberships. We have an ambitious goal here over 3 nights. We're trying to grow 300 new paid members. There's a lot of people asking you for money, a lot of outlets asking you for money. As far as I know, we're one of the only ones that are actually out there on the ground all across America. Not only are we on the ground right now in Chicago, like I said, in an hour and a half, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. Right after this, our John Farina, who has covered over 70, let me repeat, over 70 ceasefire protests. He has covered in New York City, in D.C. He's covered in the rain, in the heat. He's been out there at 3 a.m. There's no one other than him that has covered as many protests as him. And it does become repetitive. And sometimes we wonder, are we just spinning our wheels? But we are out there because the people continue to be out there protesting, and it costs a lot of money. Hell, we have been charged because we go way past our data plan, because sometimes John live streamed yesterday from Chicago for 6 hours straight. That's way, way more than we could afford on our own. And we have no funding from the corporate sugar daddies of the Democratic or the Republican Party. Our funding comes from you. So if it's within your means, sign up tonight. Statuscoup.com/join. Statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as a cup of coffee. Starbucks cup of coffee. $5 a month. Statuscoup.com/join. And if you're new to Status Coup, here's a little bit more. Let's take a look at some of our on-the-ground reporting over the years. I mean, it really has, to me, has been an economic Hunger Games that's being depicted by corporate media that happens to take advertisements from companies like John Deere as the wealthiest country on earth, American dream, work hard. Can you kind of talk about the disconnect you felt in these conditions working at John Deere while you were getting less and less, but it's depicted much differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it all. Look, corporate media controls the narrative, and that's what's fed to people every day. You know, Joe Biden, proclaims to be the most pro-union president in history. Where's he at? Where's he talking now?
Joe Manchin has been the thorn in the side of West Virginians for decades.
We're just a number to them. We're as replaceable as a light bulb.
Go all the way back to the media, and they're not there for us. There's no one there for us. We're all here struggling, and nothing's being done.
You're not talking about like residual scars from 6 years ago. You're talking about stuff you're getting now.
This is in the last 24.
All right. So that's some of our on-the-ground reporting. Coming up next, we were going to have 2 guests, but we're kind of rolling with the punches because of a lot of our guests are actually on the ground in Chicago at the DNC. So some are running late. Some we might not have tonight. We might bump to another night. But joining me now, I'm delighted to say, is Paco Fabian. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You are with Our Revolution. You are the, I believe, the deputy executive.
Correct. Yes, Paco Fabian, Deputy Director, Our Revolution. Thanks for having me on, Jordan. Appreciate it.
Damn, you pronounced it way better than me. And hopefully Joseph is feeling okay. Joseph was supposed to be on, but he is under the weather. So thanks for filling in.
He's on the mend.
So I want to, before I ask you a question, I want to play this clip because I think it's a perfect setup to some of, I wouldn't say debate, but maybe some difference of opinion you and I might have. But this is a clip. I believe it was on MSNBC earlier today. Hold on. We're doing this kind of, hold on. Harris's plan. Harris agenda.
Includes a $6,000 child tax credit for newborns, $25,000 for first home buyers, a federal ban on price gouging for groceries and food, lowering the cost on prescription drugs, and canceling medical debt for millions of Americans. But as NBC News reports, gone are the days of skyscraper ambitions of Medicare for all and a Green New Deal. Progressives are focusing on a more pragmatic agenda than what we saw in 2020. Joining me now is our friend, Democratic Congresswoman from California, Sydney Kamlager-Dobbs. She is a member of the Progressive Caucus. It's good to see you as always. And I'm just going to tell viewers, as you're doing now, you were nodding as I was reading off that part about the pragmatic proposals. What are your thoughts on Harris's economic proposals? And do you think pragmatism is the way to appeal to a broader element and win in November?
I absolutely think we should be living and working in the real world.
So that was a congresswoman basically saying live in the real world and bye-bye to Medicare for all and those things. No offense to her. I'm sure she's fine. I want to also add this from NBC News article. They quoted Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Quote, I don't think that perfection is ever on the ballot, but real progress is, Jayapal told NBC. Unless Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren were elected president, we still have to work to do to get those full things to be mainstream. Quote, so much of our progressive caucus agenda is stuff that we know she is for, speaking of Vice President Harris, just as the Biden-Harris administration was for, and I believe that Harris-Walz administration will be for. So my question to you, I think that how I feel and a lot of progressives feel, I don't really give a damn what they're for. I care what they're going to fight for. Because we could all be for things theoretically, but what are you willing to fight for? President Biden, for example, he ran on a $15 minimum wage. And very quickly when he got in, it became, well, the parliamentarian and this, that, and the other thing, and quickly surrendered. Our revolution, I mean, you know, has gotten some grief for working within the Democratic Party, you know, declaring certain things victories when a lot of progressives thought not. But what do you think? Because when I hear this, we got to live in the real world. This all seems like a real setback to me if we're trying to get urgent things done like healthcare, Medicare for all, try to put out the climate inferno, et cetera, et cetera.
Look, I mean, and thanks again for having me on and for playing that clip. It's really important for folks to hear it. Look, unfortunately, that's the field we're playing on, right? Yes, we support Medicare for all, and we wish we could get it done. There's no path for that currently, and hopefully we're able to create a path under a Harris-Walz administration. But under Biden, for example, he immediately said, I'm not for Medicare for all. It's not going to get done. So we had to work on steps towards Medicare for all because that's what we were dealt with, right? And so I think there is a danger in shutting down any sort of progress, as minimal as it may be, for saying Medicare for all or nothing, right? If there is a little bit of progress that can be made, for example, on prescription drug prices that'll really help people, or on including dental, vision, and hearing within Medicaid. Yes, it's not Medicare for all, but it is something that will provide relief to some folks. It will provide some help, not the help we would love to be able to provide folks, but it is a step in that direction. And so, again, I think, Pramila's quote says it perfectly, right? If we had a Bernie Sanders in the White House, then we would have somebody that would be fighting for Medicare for all, fighting for a $15 minimum wage, fighting for ending medical debt, student debt, etc. But that's unfortunately not the field we're playing on. Those aren't our teammates. And so if we're able to move the ball forward, even in small steps, I'd take that over not getting anything done at all, right?
So I'll push back on that in this respect. I think that, I mean, listen, I've been around the country for almost a decade, and the response I get from most, forget the term progressive, just most working people, is they don't expect a magic wand overnight to get things like Medicare for all, but they want an actual strategy to get it. And what I've heard from, not that you're a spokesperson for AOC or any of them, but what I've heard is, well, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, them speaking to activists. There's a lot of things, and we're working things behind the scenes that you don't know about. And most people have said, well, if there is a strategy behind the scenes, please lay it out, because we don't really hear about Medicare for all. You don't even see it tweeted that much anymore from the AOCs of the world, squad members. Obviously, Bernie has been talking about it forever, but there doesn't really seem to be a strategy other than let's get what we can from Biden. And the problem, or now Harris, and the problem I have with that, this isn't your first rodeo. We've seen this before. Obama, when he ran, I mean, he had a massive,
right?
Yeah, Obama had a massive army of organizers. In my opinion, he didn't mean most of what he ran on, but he had a massive army and he left them at the altar. When he got in there, Bernie had a massive army. I mean, Bernie's Slack channel was more members than DSA. And frankly, Bernie chose to work within the administration, work with Biden, and did not activate his base. And so what is going on? What is the strategy other than let's take what we can get until we possibly have a progressive? And hey, Alan's joining us, executive director of Progressive Democrats of America. Go ahead.
Look, I mean, our one of our focuses at our revolution is to try and get as many progressives elected at all levels of government, right? Fully understanding that it's going to be a real slog to get more progressives elected to Congress, whether it's the Senate or the House. But also, look, focusing on electing, for example, in St. Louis, right? We now have a progressive mayor, a progressive chair of the Board of Aldermen, president of the Board of Aldermen, which is the equivalent of the city council, and a majority of progressives, now run that city. And they're starting to implement things like universal basic income pilot program, rent control, other things that, we as progressives, of course, support. So yes, Congress is important. We need to get more progressives in Congress so that we can move things like Medicare for all. Unfortunately, right now we're, taking losses, right, because of AIPAC with Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and others that would be supporters of some of our priorities. And so we also have to focus at the local level, right? A lot of stuff that happens in cities has a more direct effect on people's lives than things that happen in Congress. And making sure that we are able to build those progressive majorities in cities like St. Louis and other places can help provide some of those, provide some of the relief we're looking for until we're able to get a majority in Congress that'll make these things national.
And joining us also is Alan Minsky. He's Executive Director, Progressive Democrats of America. They just had a conference in Chicago. Alan, how you doing?
Great. And, you mentioned, the AOC and the squad members not pushing Medicare for all. We did have Pramila Jayapal introduce our segment advocating for Medicare for all, followed by a long presentation by National Nurses United that was awesome. And then a representative from People's Action, Physicians for National Health Plan, Healthcare Now, and then One Payer States. And I thought Rep. Jayapal was, again, unequivocal in her support and very eloquent and powerful in her support for Medicare for all. And I think she does recognize it's unlikely that we'll see, even if the much heralded trifecta is achieved by Democrats, that we'll see the administration really lead in any kind of push, a Harris administration for Medicare for all. So she's very conscious of the type of things that are additions to the current system that aren't just, what I would consider almost sub-incremental changes to, it's of course absurd that we have the private healthcare system we have. We all know what the outcomes are. It's a complete catastrophe for the American people, for their health and for their finances. And by the way, where does that money go? If you really follow the trail of money, it goes into the pockets of the investor class, right? It's an unbelievable catastrophe of a system. And she acknowledges that. And she, however, is interested in doing, and then I think she was very involved, by the way, in the Bernie Sanders Biden team negotiations around healthcare strategy. And I think she is a very good, very exceptional organizer, and also a really brilliant strategic mind. So she's talking about pushing for the addition of dental, hearing, mental health, eyesight, additions to Medicare, getting ACO reach out. And I think on those fronts, significant improvements can be made that put us on the path to universal single payer healthcare, not sort of in a way deters us off of that. So there's that as a strategy. But of course, look, I don't have any illusions. I would love to be surprised pleasantly. What's going to happen is if we do have something like the Democratic trifecta, and that Kamala Harris is, suddenly morphs into something that resembles her Senate voting record, which, again, that was easy because McConnell was the head of the Senate and there was a lot of symbolic votes. But no, I don't really have any illusions. And we have to push and push and push and demand. And here's what I think will happen, though. And this is why I think the work that our revolution does, MPDA does, and we partner on so many things, including work, yes, inside the Democratic Party, because they're going to fail. They're going to be a failed administration. They're going to be another Democratic administration that's going to preside over a populace that is utterly dissatisfied with the political class, that recognizes they are not delivering on what people need, and they're going to have the progressives and a stronger progressive movement. I mean, it's a paradox. We lost to this massive amount of money. We lost two of our greatest champions in Congress to all this money from AIPAC, crypto bros in coordination, I'm guessing, and I think it's true, with AIPAC to take down Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. And at the very hour, in the international press, the national press, I mean, however much it really isn't the progressive politics fully that our revolution and PDA support and are all about, Walz's selection was viewed as a symbol of the growing power of the progressive movement, and actually was a bigger news story probably overall. And so there's a public consciousness that we are a movement that has momentum still, and we are going to be there loud and clear. And there's going to be no switch. If they're just another status quo Democratic administration, it's basically a setup for the Republicans and the MAGA movement to remain competitive. And they shouldn't be competitive if there is a Democratic Party that delivers on what the American people want. And again, I have no illusions. My expectation, fast forward 6 months, 9 months, there'll be incremental improvements and even building upon what Biden did domestically, which wasn't wholly insignificant, but fundamentally and structurally on the major ticket items that we need to see complete. I mean, look, all the other countries that are wealthy and technological in the world, even through 4.5 decades of neoliberalism, their social democratic social contracts have been chipped down, but they're much, much stronger than in America. And the American public want that here. And until we get it, I think we're going to have dissatisfaction with the political class, and particularly a Democratic Party that supposedly is the party that's going to be the vehicle for that. So, yeah, that's sort of where I am, Jordan. There you go.
And let me ask you both a little pushback, because to me, one of the most important and I think encouraging things Bernie said when he was running for president was, no, when I get in there, the first thing I'm going to do is not meet and compromise with Mitch McConnell. I'm going to tell Mitch, look outside the window at my army, my activist army. He was going to say, we're going to have tens of thousands of people in Washington. Now you could say, well, he didn't get in there, but the principle is we're not going to go in there and try to compromise and negotiate as the first option. We are going to galvanize our troops, our base of activists, of our revolution, progressive Democrats of America, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's one of the main issues in the progressive movement of the recent years. Bernie got out, and then there was kind of no activation of those troops. There was the whole forced to vote debacle. But whether it's AOC or others, it seems they chose to focus on working within the party, but not activating the grassroots. AOC started right outside Nancy Pelosi's office with the climate people, and quickly that those kind of protests stopped. With the disclaimer, neither of you are spokespeople for any of these folks. Don't we need a lot more of that? Don't we need more confrontation, activating the troops, getting a little bit more confrontational? Because I'm not seeing that from the squad. The only one really, as of recently, is Rashida Tlaib, with her brave, holding up that war criminal sign when Netanyahu spoke. But I think people are not expecting perfection from elected progressives. They want them to rabble rouse. They want them to activate the base. And I don't see that happening. Revolution's in your title, and I know you want one, Alan. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Yeah. You're not wrong. Look, and there is, the cardinal sin that a lot of elected progressives in particular, engage in, which is trying to play an inside game, right? You talked a little bit about all the things that are happening behind the scenes that, I'm not privy to, and neither is anybody else here. And we don't know what that is, right? But we do know that inside strategy only works if there's a big outside strategy pushing hard, right? We saw a little bit of that with the uncommitted vote. It kicked off in Michigan with Listen to Michigan and other places. And you saw a change in the way Biden was at least talking about the conflict in Gaza, even though no real solutions have happened. They withheld some bombs from getting shipped over for a couple of weeks before they actually shipped them over. But there was a little bit of a change in rhetoric, and that was because there was a big outside push challenging that position. That needs to continue. I mean, Nina Turner was on earlier talking about A. Philip Randolph, right, and his relationship with the president, and how the president told him, "Well, make me do it," and he did, right? He threatened a 1,000 black men marching on Washington until he got what he wanted, and he did get what he wanted. So, or at least part of what he wanted. So that's the history in this country, right? There needs to be a big outside push in order to change the inside, and then the inside can communicate sort of what the best way is to address what's going on the outside. But you can't just have an inside.
I think communicate's the key word, because they're not explaining what's going on behind the scenes, and they're not explaining what the strategy is. And if you're not telling us, people are going to be angry and frustrated. Alan, any parting thoughts? Please. Tell us.
I do actually. Yeah, I can tell you this. Let me say this. Look, Paco Fabian and Joseph at Our Revolution, hopefully myself as well. We know the members of the squad. We know Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna. Just maybe, we will be more effective at conveying that message at the moment when it matters than Jimmy Dore was. Okay? I don't think we're going to be hurling vituperative and gratuitous insults and ugly insults at people. And also, we're down. I can't speak ever for OR, but I can pretty much say from out here, it looks like I think OR, and I know OR is down, and PDA is totally down to do exactly what you described in terms of mobilization. But it does take mobilization from good faith actors like OR and PDA, as opposed to vituperative. And this is not Jordan Charlton, by the way. Jordan, your work as a journalist, as you know, I think is exceptional.
Thank you.
But when Jimmy Dore is leading the charge, and maybe we shouldn't be surprised he ends up on Alex Jones or wherever he ends up after that. I don't know if he's actually been on Alex Jones. I'm pretty sure he's been on Fox News a lot. So, but anyway, I do want to say this. There will be an opportunity.
He did just have a nice interview with Alex Jones. So we've come 360.
Okay, there we go. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. I don't track Jimmy's career closely, so certainly not at this point. So but I think that we're going to have a few opportunities with. Look, we also are going to be able to achieve some things that are very important with the mainstream of the Democratic Party right off the bat. And I think we have to be adamant that these things have to be achieved right off the bat. And it's popular mobilization. I think they'll be happy to see. That could lay the table for, again, we get this sort of muscle in shape and we're getting our bodies in shape for this kind of activism. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act, they're committed to passing it through a filibuster carve out and no holds. They can't pull back from that. Harris is saying she's all for it. Codifying Roe v. Wade. Let's see them do that. And again, there are a few other measures, but those two in particular, right off the bat, we're going to be mobilized in support of those things. The American public should all be mobilized and absolutely demanding. Because don't forget, the Democratic Party has had the opportunity to do these things and failed to do so in the past, often with really cynical political calculus behind what ends up being their final decision. We can't allow that to happen there. But yes, obviously, the macroeconomic issues in our society are central concern to the American public. And the failure of the American political elites, political class, if you like, to address those concerns consistently is at the heart of the crisis of democracy. Donald Trump is a symptom, not the cause. And his total, now going in that direction as opposed to a Bernie Sanders direction, that's us to make the case, to persuade, to bring people in, to be inclusive, to do everything in the spirit of solidarity, and to make that the option for the status quo neoliberal anti of the present. And that has been for the past 45 years with the American political class. But again, we got to get that going. You're right. There's no doubt what you're laying out and what you're asking. I do think Jordan is on target for how we are going to have to be prepared to mobilize, not only in face of the current administration, not waiting even for when they hit the road. They're going to hit the wall if they don't make significant changes with public dissatisfaction. And also continue to build a movement of people who are inside the party and coordination outside the party. And of course, it's always an honor to work with OR. So,
and I lied. One last thing, in the spirit of them pressuring them. Do you think that progressives should hold out until there's a commitment from Kamala Harris, either to hold funding for Israeli action against Gaza or a ceasefire, because she hasn't made that commitment?
Look, in Our Revolution, we haven't endorsed her, and we have no plans to until we hear more about just what you're mentioning. along with more details on her policies on what she's going to do to help out the working class. Right? Yes, it's okay to talk about prescription drugs. It's okay to talk about hearing and everything, but how are you going to make it happen? Right? And we haven't heard that, so we haven't endorsed.
Absolutely. Alan, did you want to add something before we go?
Yeah, I did. Look, it might not be popular with your listeners, and so if they feel more drawn to OR's position, that's understandable. But we had a tremendous amount of pressure from our base for us to endorse Kamala Harris, so we ran a poll. First, initially, we did just a straw poll with all candidates listed, giving every opportunity. She got 91% on that. That just built a greater groundswell for official endorsement poll. She got 92%. And, we're not going to go against that. Now, we do happen to feel that that endorsement is not a strategic bad move, and that it gives us, we feel that that will be, it's understood. We know the campaign heard it. They put out our press release wide and loud and made a big deal out of it. And so that gives us, we think, a strong hand to remain in dialogue and to be an oppositional voice. And in terms of Gaza, yeah, that has to happen when she's president, or we'll be right back out in the streets. I mean, weapons cannot be given to Israel by the United States anymore. That's PDA's position.
Thank you both for joining me. I know you get a lot of slings and arrows, so I appreciate you willing to answer the questions. We'll definitely have to do this again.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We are about 1 hour into this megathon. We still have Marianne Williamson to come. We believe Ryan Grimm, if he's still online, to get into the DNC building. But we think we're going to have Ryan Grimm soon. We're also going to have Erica Andiola. She's a dreamer and an immigration activist. Kai Newark, social justice climate activist. W. Mondale Robinson with Black Voters Project. And plenty of other stuff, including in an hour from now, we're going to be on the ground in Chicago covering protests outside of the Israeli consulate. I want to remind you, status coup. We're 6 years old. We are the only independent. We don't have a dollar, a cent from the big banks, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, military industrial complex. Our funding comes from you. We've been all over this country, Flint, East Palestine, UAW picket lines. We've covered over 70 ceasefire protests, John Deere strikes, Amazon labor union organizing. We've been there when Starbucks workers were organizing. We're there before they win, on the ground. We were down in Cop City. We were there twice in Atlanta covering that. We do this on a shoestring budget, but we could only grow and hopefully get more reporters, producers, etc. as far as you take us. There's a lot of outlets that ask for money. God bless them. We are the only ones that are not exclusively in a studio. So please, please, please support us if you can. Statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as 16 cents a day. We're really shooting for 300 new members this week. We've gotten, I believe, 10 to 15 so far while we've been live. So please support us. Also, I want to remind you, and I will promote this because no one else will. You are not going to hear in the Democratic National Convention this week. You will not hear about Flint, Michigan. You will not hear about the fact that it is 10 years into their ongoing water crisis. The water is still toxic. All criminal charges have been dropped. All the damaged pipes have not been replaced. They do not have Medicare for all. It is a disaster, and that is why 2 weeks ago, after 8 years of reporting, I released my book on the Flint water cover-up. It's called We the Poisoned. Thank you to everyone who's picked it up so far, ordered it online or in bookstores. You can get it now. We the Poisoned, exposing the Flint water crisis cover-up. Here's a little bit more on my book. This is the biggest government cover-up of the 21st century.
What do you call a decade of repeated Watergates, repeated times that they're actually trying to, how I feel, kill us off?
None of the facts have been disputed. Erin Brockovich actually said, this is the biggest cover-up you'll ever read.
6 months after the water switch, my throat started bothering me. So I went for a biopsy. Long story short, it was aggressive throat cancer.
And justice delayed has been justice denied.
Yeah, the brown water coming out of there. And, you know, in the bathroom.
And the youngest suicide victim, 5 years old. We talk about the effects, the effects of lead. It affects your brain, it affects your mentality.
It's been 8 years, man. It's been 8 fucking years. I can't take it. And if I die because of this, I'm dead. I'm dead. But someone's got to speak it up.
What I can do is, at the very least, expose what was done to these people, the details, the who, what, when, why. Maybe it could help them fight it elsewhere. And again, that's We the Poisoned, Exposing the Flint Water Crisis Cover-Up. Listen, why I am pushing this book so much, because trust me, I am not going to become a New York Times bestseller, and I'm probably going to lose money on this book. I've been there 21 times, and a lot of that came out of my own personal savings before we built up Status Coup. I went to Flint on my own dime, for those of you that don't know. But why this is so important, when you look at the theater that is going on inside the convention right now, and when I say theater, I mean, let's just be real. AOC's speech yesterday was complete bullshit and nonsense. Biden's speech, whatever you could understand from it, was nonsense. Tonight, Obama will speak. It'll be plenty of fluff, part the oceans, heal the world. It'll be a bunch of nonsense. Bernie's speaking tonight. I think he'll be raw and authentic, but I think he's going to say stuff that even might not pass the spell test. But the bottom line is, we could talk about democracy until we're blue in the face. We could talk about democracy is on the line, but there is a urgent emergency in America. From Flint, Michigan, to East Palestine, Ohio, to Western Pennsylvania, to East Chicago, Indiana, to Cape Fear, North Carolina, to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I could go on and on and on. I've been covering water poisoning around this country. I've been covering air poisoning around this country. I've been in Kalamazoo, Michigan over the last few months. You might not be aware that Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, who the media continues to slobber over, helped a multi-billion-dollar packaging company gas. I am not being dramatic. Gas a poor black community. How do I know? Because my cameraman and producer Colin and I went there and literally got sick ourselves a block away from that plant. How do I know? Because I'm talking to residents who have daughters and sons dying of severe asthma attacks at age 17, age 32. This is a packaging company releasing dozens of toxic levels of gas, and the governor of Michigan, a Democrat, helped them expand a few years ago. If I had 3 hours, I could go down all the communities with stories like that. We've been covering the chemical nuking of East Palestine, Ohio, Western Pennsylvania by the hands of Norfolk Southern, a multi-billion-dollar railroad company that unnecessarily detonated 1 million pounds of toxic, cancerous vinyl chloride over East Palestine, Ohio, and Western Pennsylvania. I was just there a week ago. I'm interviewing 35-year-olds who have lost their hair. I'm interviewing men who have double breast cancer and had to have a double mastectomy when they were perfectly healthy before that. I'm interviewing 18-year-old girls who are having seizures, perfectly healthy before that. Interviewing people who are having strokes. Interviewing 55-year-old women who suddenly have dementia. Interviewing people, there are women who now are not getting their periods anymore. There are young girls now having premature periods. The list goes on. Full body tingling, complete memory loss. This is happening in the wealthiest country on earth. This is happening in the so-called democracy and envy of the world. It will not be discussed in the confines of the Democratic National Convention or the Republican National Convention. It's not going to be discussed on the campaign trail other than maybe a line here and there. The infrastructure deal, contrary to the spin, is not replacing all of the lead service lines in America. And just replacing lead will not fix the environmental genocide going on, because corporate America is still allowed to dump toxic chemicals all over the country. I tell you this, even though my book is about Flint, we are one of the only outlets that are covering these important stories, and they are not the sexy stories, and they do not go viral. I promise you, they do not go viral. And you did not make money off of covering these stories. But these are the stories that matter, because sure, democracy matters, but democracy doesn't matter if you don't have clean water. Democracy doesn't matter if your air is going to poison you. Democracy doesn't matter if your kids are going to play in soil with lead 200 times the allowable limit, which I found in Indiana. So please, 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 if you can, definitely get my book. The link is in the description under the live stream. You can order it on Amazon. You can order it in Barnes & Noble. It's in some bookstores now. And more importantly, support Status Coup so we can continue doing this important work. Reminder, in less than an hour, we will be live on the ground covering protests outside the Israeli consulate in Chicago. Tomorrow night, we'll continue this stream. Tomorrow night, we're going to have Jill Stein, Crystal Ball, among others. But I wanted to next play, we recorded this earlier, an important interview. You ever notice there's a lot of white people on cable news and in newspapers talking about black voters and telling you how important black voters are and speaking for them? Well, black voters are important, but just black people we should care about. I was delighted to be able to interview W. Mondale Robinson. He is actually a mayor of a small North Carolina town, but he's also the founder of the Black Male Voter Project. Really, really interesting thing he's working on for years. Let's take a look at our conversation. Hey, it's Jordan. I am happy to be joined by W. Mondale Robinson. You are the founder of the Black Male Voters Project, also the mayor of Enfield, North Carolina, which is awesome that we have an elected official talking to us. You're in Chi-Town. I wanted to first ask you, because it always bothers me, there's so many white people on TV talking about black voters and black people, which maybe they should do something about that. But before Vice President Harris became the nominee, according to pundits and the polls, there was a surprising amount of black voters shifting over to Donald Trump. You have made a real career and mission out of kind of separating fiction and kind of stereotypes about black voters. Can you tell me what are the top issues right now? Because not all voters are the same, but obviously black voters care about a lot of things that, you know, everyone else cares about.
Hey, Jordan, thank you for having me. And let's start by setting the record straight on a few things, right? Black voters are not a monolith is what you keep hearing from everybody. I hate this statement for a number of reasons. Black people are not monolithic, but the way black people vote is monolithic. And most people think that's a slap in the face of black people. But in actuality, it's a testament to our community, the way we see community across geography, across economic lines. Black people usually show up voting for what's best for our entire community. No other people in this country shows up like black people do together. So I want to start there and acknowledge that. Secondly, you said something that was absolutely correct. The people on TV is full of fiction, not just the Housewives show, but also on CNN, and MSNBC, and all of these other shows. People talking about black people that don't really know anything, and in this case, specifically about black men, are really pissing me off, if I'm to say it bluntly. And here's why. Here's why. None of the narratives people keep saying about black men becoming more conservative are backed up by historical data or voting data. In 2020, Donald Trump said he was going to get 20%. In January, he was going to get 20% of the black men vote, and the world ran with it and acted as if it was true. But when black men showed up in 2020 to vote, they actually voted less for Donald Trump than they did in 2016. And no one wrote that story. No one told that article, even though Black Male Voter Project, we were screaming this the entire season, saying it was not possible for Donald Trump to get more black men when we saw how black men were showing up. 2022, same thing. 2023, In Ohio, we watch black men outperform everybody, including black women, for women's right to choose. We outperform black women by 8 percentage points, and no one is telling that narrative. Black men are not this new conservative leaning voting bloc. Polls keep saying it, but polls keep being wrong. When are we going to stop prioritizing what pollsters say and then talk about organizations like mine, who has more information on black men than any other org in this country? Here's the sad part, Jordan. When we invest in black men, when we listen, and it's not during an election season, but year round, then we find out that we can become trusted messengers for black men. And becoming trusted messengers for black men is more important than knowing the issue that's most important to black men. So when you ask what issue is going to animate or motivate black men to go to the polls, it's not just an issue, it's an issue. And you have to be right on the issues, and you have to be someone they trust. And unfortunate for politicians of all stripes, black men don't trust them. For Democrats, the trust level is around 34%. For Republicans, it's somewhere around 8 to 10%. So I'm telling people the trust deficit is bigger than the issue deficit. Knowing what to say to black men does not matter if they don't trust you. So this is why Black Male Voter Project is a year-round organization that work to listen to the black men more than talking at them about what's ailing them. Because who knows better than the people who are living with their backs against the wall at what's keeping them from voting and seeing power in the vote. We know that there are 9.6 million black men registered to vote in this country. 9.6 million. Of that 9.6 million, 52% have not voted in the last 4 federal elections or only one. That is not a critique of black men. It's a critique of the sorry transactional tactics that the parties are using to reach them and the failed half-ass efforts they use. So we at Black Men Voter Project has completely revamped what it means to engage black men around the political strategy. And it does not look like politics. It looks more like psychology. The lessons from Maslow that tells us if people don't have their basic needs met, they can't think about things that are self-actualization. The lessons from MIT, habit loop forming, how you form and break old habits, bad habits, and create new habits. This is what we do at Black Male Voter Project to meet black men where they are and to bring them into the political fold.
And, you know, I remember 2016 when I was covering the South Carolina primary, I actually went to a barbershop to do interviews. And I was pretty struck by how apathetic people were, because they've basically been the history of America, exploited, oppressed, lied to, and empty promises. And a lot of them were not really encouraged to vote for anyone, even Hillary Clinton, for example. As the first woman president, certainly not Trump. And in 2020, similar, even during COVID, they weren't satisfied with Trump, but they just felt like they're just getting empty promises from the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party just shows up at churches, you know, every 4 years, or isn't consistently doing outreach to them, isn't consistently delivering for them until they want their vote. Are you... Obviously, you know better than I. Are you getting that sentiment now? And how does the Democratic Party change that if they want to, you know, get the black vote, but more importantly, deliver?
Yeah. So the first thing is, like, you know, apathy is you may be using the wrong emotion. Apathy implies that there's nonchalantness about it. You probably was sensing in the barbershops, like I do with many black men, is antipathy. So there's a level of hate for politics, and that emotion has caused plenty of politicians and consultants to trip up. Because if you approach black men as if they're apathetic about politics, then you already fail dramatically. You need to have that understanding that there's a level of antipathy, and rightfully so. We're talking about a demographic that has had the right to vote supposedly since the 15th Amendment. That's 154 years that we've supposedly had the right to vote. And we've never seen an option to vote without hurdles put in the way to keep black men out of the polls. So that's a level of antipathy. Plus, you have to marry that with the fact that black men have the worst political outcomes of any demographic in this country, not excluding anyone, right? Including black women. Black men are the only people in this country that can be born in a wealthy or middle class family and still are likely to experience poverty in their life. Black men are the only, we have the shortest lives of everybody in this country. We have the worst healthcare outcome. We have the worst education outcome. We are over sentenced and over policed like no one else. And we are more likely to be killed by police for some of us than we are anything else, right? Police officers for young black men are the 6th leading cause of death. These are all political issues. So to believe that black men are nonchalant about this is to say that you don't know what it means to be black men in America. The level of hate, though, is real, and that's what you were feeling, Jordan. Here's the problem. There's nothing Democrats can do to overcome that right now. No party can overcome that in one election cycle. That trust is gone because of the lack of action to address these issues. And that's not a present like Kamala Harris problem, meaning it's not her fault, but she is a part of the Democratic Party, and she What I do know, though, is the possibility to bring in black men will not be the work of the party. It will not, because they spend $100 million on ads, work. If we're going to increase the electorate, if we're going to see how many black men turn out or see more black men turn out, we're going to have to invest in organizations like Black Male Voter Project and other trusted messengers like Black Futures Lab and other organizations that are doing this work, that's been doing this work year round when there's not an election. I will also say that, you know, in 2020, people talk about what happened in 2020 about the black men not being excited. Measuring enthusiasm does not seem to be a good measurement for black men, because while we showed that we were not enthusiastic about the election, we still outperformed any presidential election before that, except for 2008, meaning Joe Biden as presidential candidate got more black men vote percentage-wise and raw number than Barack Obama did in 2012.
Absolutely. And lastly, I'd like to ask you, because a big thing that I see around the country, and I report all over, is you got 5 to 10 blocks that are made beautiful, great restaurants, bars, gentrification, and then the rest of cities are left to rot. From Flint to Detroit to Milwaukee to Cleveland, it's called urban renewal, economic development, but it's pushing a lot of poor black men, black people out of their communities. But the actual policy proposals that we're getting, you know, tax incentives, $25,000 for a home down payment, that's all good. I don't really see a lot of proposals for significantly more black business ownership, black real estate. Can you talk about gentrification as a problem? And I don't see from either party any appetite to, you know, maybe give less power to real estate developers and more power to small business, you know, black business owners.
Yeah, I mean, listen, black business owners and black business are growing faster under this administration than any before them. But you're absolutely right. There's a gap that exists, and it's a political problem. Here's what I would say, though. Before we talk about black business ownership, we have to talk about the unemployment rate, not just the brothers in the city, but black men in rural spaces. What people tend to forget that in the South, where majority of black people are percentage-wise, black people are more likely to be rural as they are urban. And I don't think people consider black people to be rural people. I am a mayor of a rural town, and I actually went back home to run for mayor in my hometown because a white man from New Jersey was gentrifying my hometown. And we won. We beat an incumbent without running ads by 50 percentage points. And we did that by being part of the community, in the community, running a grassroots organization campaign that talked about issues that were pertinent to people that I knew and grew up with, right? So I think the party needs to get back to that, this idea that all of the campaigns or most of the campaigns that are run at the national level or federal elections are ran by general contractors who used to be media consultants, and they're spending 70-80% of their budgets on media. Yes, we have to address the housing crisis in this country, but it can start by revamping not just the real estate market and real estate agents, but we can also demystify what it means to own a home. There are tons of programs right now that we should be putting in front of poor people, black men and other people alike, that can address the housing crisis. In North Carolina, the minimum wage is around $7.25. As mayor, because my town was moving too slow because the state don't fund us the way they should, I created this other project called the Horizon Project, where I got with a person who built homes, smart homes. I found a bank out of California, and I said we need to build houses for people that make minimum wage that works 40 hours a week. So if you are a 2-person household and you make minimum wage and work 20 hours, and the other person in your household make minimum wage of 20 hours, then you qualify for one of these houses that we're building, these smart homes. And we're trying to address housing problem in that crisis. And what we're doing is what people meant for bad when they were gentrifying our hometown by building these $300,000 and $400,000 houses that people in my community could not afford. Now we're going to take it and build houses that are $100,000 that people that make $7.25 an hour qualify for, and they're going to move in with $200,000 equity off bat. So people that never had an opportunity or thought they would have access to America's dream to own home ownership are now not just owning a home, but they're moving in with more equity than their house is worth. And that's what we got to be. We have to be revolutionary in the way we think about problems that we didn't create, but we're suffering from. And I think that revolutionary spirit is missing from the party, and that is creating that excitement, a gap that you're talking about.
Absolutely. How can people get involved if they want to know more about Black Male Voter Project?
Yeah, I mean, we're Black Male Voter Project on all social media platforms. That's our website address, blackmalevoterproject.org. And I'm Mundell, and I also create for Rebel HQ as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. So that was Mondale Robinson doing great work. I want to give a special shout out. So for those of you who need help in the virtual event space, and trust me, I've worked with a lot of grifters in the progressive movement. Not many, but a few that were pains in the ass to work with. We and Goliath is not one of them. They're an award-winning virtual and hybrid event agency. They have been, if you notice, our production value has gone from a 7 to about a 12 in this broadcast. That is We and Goliath. They are helping us to spruce up and to do this from soup to nuts, this 3-day, the People's Mic. They're awesome, really easy to work with, and they're just really, really great at what they do, from the graphics to the concepts. So they could help you with digital events, digital programming, and a whole lot of other things. Let me show a quick promo so you know more about them. And we're actually going to have on Daniel from We and Goliath on Thursday to tell you more. And I hope we can work with them even more, because if you notice, when we're on the ground, we're kind of rabble rousers, not exactly great production value, but I'd love to spruce things up when we're on the ground. It's always just been about getting the money to pay people, but they have been really helpful in helping us in this event, and you should definitely check them out. Again, We and Goliath. I want to turn now, really important topic, because if you notice, the Democratic Party tends to try and reach these elusive, quote, swing voters by trying to be as right-wing as possible. It's kind of vile, if you ask me. And last night, President Biden, he kind of bragged about his border bill that was synced by the Republicans because of Trump. A border bill that, if you actually ask people with, a heart, is really, really right-wing and anti-immigrant. Let's play what Biden said last night.
The border. Here's what he won't tell you. Trump killed the strongest bipartisan border deal in the history of the United States that we negotiated with the Senate Republicans. Took 4 weeks. Then I had to take executive action. The result of the executive action I took, border encounters have dropped over 50%. In fact, there are fewer border crossings today than when Donald Trump left office. And unlike Trump, we will not demonize immigrants, saying they're the poison of blood of America.
So that was President Biden. Really happy to be joined by what I call an old burner. She worked for Bernie Sanders' campaign. She has been arrested many times in her activism, is a dreamer herself. Erica Andiola, an immigration rights activist, has also done work in climate. I wanted to ask you, because you've stayed active, what do you hear? Because I'm hearing in the audience them cheering for this border bill. And if you've actually looked at it, I don't really think there's anything to cheer about.
No, and it's just so frustrating. I mean, let's think about where Democrats were at in 2020, right? When Trump was separating families at the border, when things were really out in the open on how things were really horrible at the border, right? How Border Patrol treats immigrants. I remember Representative Castro and AOC going to the border and going into one of the jail cells where they hold immigrants. And it's just like a lot of those images come to mind. And now we have, but a few years later, we have Democrats really like making their main point that they are trying to pass a bill basically to end asylum. So it's just such a big shift, and it's unfortunate because the fact is that he also, President Biden, had an executive action that went into effect yesterday. At the same time as he was speaking, it was an executive action that allows for people who have an undocumented spouse and meets other criteria to be able to become citizens. And he didn't even talk about that. So to me, it's just like proof that they want to sound like they are tough on immigration, even though that's not really what voters want to hear. And it's just frustrating how they don't really get the message that they don't have to sound like Republicans on immigration.
And something that really drives me crazy, and I'm sure drives you even more. There's an argument to be made, like, there's a reason so many people are coming to our border. And frankly, I don't think it's as many as the right wing and Fox News are making out to be. I don't think there's as big of a crisis as they make. They sell fear, and the Democrats are kind of buying into that. But we have created disasters in many of these Central and South American countries. You never hear the Democrats argue that. Even progressives in Congress don't argue that. Through sanctions, through the drug war, I mean, I could go on. Where is that message? Because maybe if we stopped interfering in other countries, they wouldn't be rushing here.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it as a Band-Aid to, when they talk about continuing to deport people who are trying to seek asylum at the border, who are trying to seek safety, newcomers, right? Like I hear now a lot of Democrats, and especially the Harris campaign and the Biden campaign previous to that, speaking to how they want to, deport a lot more people and cut asylum and all of this. To me, that's really a Band-Aid to what's going on in the bigger problem, which is, partly what you're speaking to, which is that a lot of countries are destabilized politically. A lot of people are leaving, places like Venezuela. A lot of us know what's going on over there, and people do leave those kinds of situations. But also climate change, right? Like we are seeing a lot of people in places like Guatemala, people who like literally live out of the land, who are now seeing that the situation for their families are changing so much that they decide to move. And that's what humans do. We pick up our things and we move to a different place if our families are in danger or if we need to seek for a better life. And then the other part of the problem is that we have an immigration system that is so outdated that there's really no way for people to seek safety in this country in a different way. So they have to travel all those miles, show up at the border and ask for asylum because they can't really do it in a different way. So to me, again, it's a Band-Aid that neither party wants to sort of look at the bigger problem and fix it, because it's a good football, right? The issue, it's a good football that they can just toss back and forth and nobody really does anything about it.
I actually was going to ask you about that because I certainly don't think the Republicans actually want to solve this, because it is one of their big issues to continually stoke, old white men and their kids to come out. And Democrats, I believe, are just being kind of pushed more to the right on this. Doesn't that kind of make you fellow dreamers kind of just feel like guinea pigs?
This has been the reality for years. I mean, there was a time in our politics that Democrats really thought that if they were good on immigration and had a positive message on immigration, that Latino voters were going to come out right, and support them. I think now that's sort of changing a little bit, but the point I'm trying to make is that when they were really invested in that strategy, it was all about, wanting to pass the path to citizenship for undocumented people and the dreamers, and they would talk about it. But the reality was that they were not actually acting on it, because they knew that keeping the issue alive would allow them to continue to talk about it. And now, on the other side, the Republicans are doing the same thing, is that they don't want to fix anything because they know that they can keep this issue alive and they can campaign on it for the election. So that's what I mean by this sort of political football that this issue has become. And the reality is a human toll, right? A human catastrophe that right now we're seeing a lot of horrible situations because people are not allowed to seek asylum. Now they're in Mexico. They don't disappear. They don't just go away, right? The numbers at the border are not as high. They're actually a lot lower because of a lot of these policies that have changed, but people haven't disappeared. They're still in Mexico. They're in this horrible camps and trying to figure out what to do with their families because a lot of them can't really go back to the countries where they fled.
Mm-hmm. And before I bring on your partner, I wanted to just ask, your story is amazing. You did not grow up wanting to get involved with politics, but you were kind of forced to. As best you can, obviously we don't have 2 hours, but can you kind of share with people, your personal story?
Absolutely. For me, I know a little bit about needing to flee because my family had to leave Mexico in the 90s because my father was abusive towards my mother, and the situation in Mexico with women, with domestic violence, it's still a horrible situation. There's not a lot of protection for people like my mother, so we had to leave, and we came to Arizona, and we've been here since then. I, as an undocumented student, struggled a lot to be able to go to college, to be able to even, do the conventional stuff that my friends were doing, like getting a driver's license or applying for scholarships. I couldn't do a lot of that. And to me, that was sort of the initiation of how I became so aware of the challenges that undocumented people had in this country, and my initiation into politics and wanting to change the system through organizing and also getting involved in politics, like I did it with the Bernie campaign and working in Congress. And now I'm still here trying to convince people that we need to fix this whole system to ensure that human beings are not falling through the cracks, and people like myself and my mom and my family can have an opportunity to really feel like we belong in this country because we have been here for so long.
Absolutely. I wanted to bring on your partner, Kai Newkirk. He's a longtime activist, social justice organizer, definitely in recent years with the climate emergency movement. And I want to play this clip of him and others being arrested fighting for climate justice.
Declare a climate emergency.
Hey, into the park.
Act with urgency. Declare a climate emergency.
Need to be a climate emergency. Act with urgency. Not resisting. You don't have to inflict pain.
Act with urgency. Declare a climate emergency.
That was amazing. Welcome, Kai. It's good to see you again. I don't know. I know Biden is a little older, but it's been depicted as historic. His Inflation Reduction Act, which provided tax credits for renewable and those kind of things. It's not bad, but I think it would have been, kind of like that's what we needed 15 years ago. Biden, in response to a lot of these heat waves, did a press conference announcing cooling centers, which to me was kind of a super soaker to a block fire. What are your thoughts? Because you've been fighting this fight, Erica, with you for many years. It seems like we're literally in the middle of an inferno, and the fire department is kind of taking their time.
Well, it's a mixed bag. I think that's the simple truth of it. That video was from last September, and we were pushing Biden to go beyond the, I think, truthfully huge and historic step forward of the Inflation Reduction Act. But it's true that it was both huge and historic and inadequate to the scale of the crisis that we're in. And so that was after the midterms, right? So Democrats lost the House. So we weren't going to pass any major new legislation. We were pushing him to take executive action to continue to move the ball forward. Now, he hasn't declared a climate emergency, which was the core demand of those actions, and to end fossil fuels. But there have been some other significant steps since then, putting a pause on all the new liquid natural gas infrastructure, which is huge driver. And a pause was actually the most effective way to ensure it was stopped at least through to the next election because of some legal complexity. So that was a big thing. The American Climate Corps was big. There have been some other steps. My understanding is they're still considering doing the official climate emergency declaration. We continue to push for that, and it needs to be done. And so I think that we just have to face the reality, which is that this is a profound and existential crisis for our nation, for our planet. That one party, Donald Trump, is a party of climate arson that denies the problem and wants to actively make it worse. And one party, the Democrats, are doing some, but not enough. And we have to really continue to push them. And we have to use all the methods that we can non-violently to do so. I think we've made progress. We have to continue to fight to do more.
And what are your thoughts? Because obviously Biden ran on a lot of things, but one of them was stopping drilling on public lands. That has not happened. By my count, 5,000 to 6,000 new permits for drilling. Obviously, Trump is running openly on drill, baby, drill. So clearly it would be worse under Trump. But Biden and by extension Harris, it does not seem like they're shifting fast enough and follow the money. They take a lot of money from Wall Street, and Wall Street's heavily invested in these fossil fuel projects still.
Yeah, the Democratic Party is pulled in different directions there. We still have the big money donors. We still have the corporate forces. Then we have the environmental movement, the climate movement, unions, all these other forces that are pulling the other direction. So it's a tug of war, right? And right now we've pulled them a lot of the way that we need to go, but not far enough. The context was incredibly difficult. You remember what was the number one thing that was being talked about under the height of inflation was gas prices. And it's a terrible situation that we're in as a country where we have this thing that most people rely on, regularly, and it's the most visible kind of public price of some kind of commodity. And we have these cartels that control the prices of it, right? And so that when there's any pressure on that, it pushes back against anything to go in the other direction in terms of clean energy. So that was a tremendous political force that was going in the wrong direction that we had to overcome to try to continue to make progress on climate. And my hope is that we've got to really take on the oil companies. We've got to really try to break the power to their political power and their power over our lives in terms of artificially inflating gas prices. Essentially, I think we should put some kind of controls in to manage them in the national interest while we're making the transition to clean energy, so we can get out of that political bind. But there's no question it's an urgent fight. We have to continue pushing to try to break and really break the grip, or at least the partial hold that big money, big oil, fossil fuel industry still has to try to limit the progress we can make on climate and clean energy.
I was talking to Nina Turner earlier, and this is for either of you, about do progressives need to get more aggressive? I can't think of anything to get more aggressive on than this, particularly leveraging your vote, leveraging your power. Do you think, yes, Trump is awful, but do you think young people, progressive-minded people need to say, we are not voting for you, or you're going to have to promise us X, Y, and Z, climate emergency, one of them, to get our vote to Vice President Harris?
Do you want to take that first, Erika, or you want
You
me
can
to?
go ahead.
All right. I would say no. We can't do that at this point. At this point, we have to be all in to win the election. Now, we can continue to push them at the same time. And it's very possible that I'll be working with folks to go back to the White House next month to try to continue escalation. I disrupted a speech of President Biden's in Tempe, Arizona, where we live, shortly after those actions, and he offered to meet with me. And I was in dialogue with the White House, and we're going to put together something. Then October 7th happened, and a lot of my focus has been on trying to win a ceasefire and end this catastrophe in Gaza. Hopefully that's going to happen any day now. We're continuing to push, but we need to continue pushing Biden, and I'll do that at the same time as trying to work to elect him. I think that's what we have to do. But any chance to move forward on climate, not just in our country, but in a way in the world, would be dashed if Trump gets back into power. Obviously, it would block any federal action that we can do. But if the U.S. is not moving in the right direction and helping to lead the world on climate, we're never going to get where we need to. And right now, we're in the critical window. So to give up another 5 years of a possibility for progress is absolutely out of the question, in my view. It's about what's the terrain of struggle. If we elect Harris, then we have a terrain where we're fighting within a coalition that's partially responsive to us, and we can push them to go from inadequate responses to adequate ones. If Trump is in there, then we're just fighting to keep from going backwards in a more aggressive fashion. So on climate, the reality could not be more clear and more stark, in my view.
And Erika, my last question, psychological one. You were at the top, at the highs of the Bernie movement, 16, 20. It was like Woodstock, and you've seen, kind of the lows in terms of after that, progressives fractured, the movement kind of siloing into different directions. What's your message? Because it's either going to be Trump or Harris for people that are fed up. Some don't want to work within the Democratic Party anymore. Some say third party or no way. Some say screw voting, screw electoral politics. Let's go out, direct, organize this and that. What's your message to folks in all those camps?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I get that. I also feel angry at times. I feel a lot of despair, and especially as I see my social media feed that just shows, just image after image of what's going on in Gaza. It just I can't feel anything other than just anger and despair to see that. And at the same time, I remind myself of what happened in 2016 when I was so angry when Hillary Clinton won the primary that I was like, you know what, I'm out of here. I don't want to have anything to do with this election. I was one of those folks who just didn't want to speak up, do anything anymore. And as soon as Trump got elected, my mom received a letter basically asking her to show up with her passport to ICE, to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, because she was going to be deported. And we had to fight to keep her here. And so to me, just that moment reminds me that there's a lot of real lives that will be affected if Trump gets elected. And it scares me. It scares me at a deep personal level. So that's where I'm at, that I can't let that happen. I can't let Trump win this election. And I will do everything in my power to ensure that he doesn't get elected. And the call to action for folks is, even if you can't get yourself to that point, let's be ready. If Harris does win the election, there's going to be so many opportunities for us as progressives to continue to push and to ensure that not only does she follow up on some of the promises that she has made, but also to push her even more for what we need on climate, on immigration, and other issues that we really care about.
Absolutely. I definitely want to have you guys back. Longer conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. Stay cool.
Can I say a last quick thing on that, George?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just want to say for the Bernie folks, could you imagine in 2016 that you would have a back-to-back of Sean Fain, a union leader who's organizing a general strike in 2018, and then a self-avowed democratic socialist like AOC speaking back-to-back in prime time from the stage of the Democratic National Convention, we have made a huge progress in shifting the position within the party and within our politics in general. And so to me, we have to hold the complexity of the hope and the progress and the obstacles. And if we do that, we can build on that and go in a whole other direction, which I think is possible if we elect Harris, Waltz, and a Democratic trifecta and the filibuster, and keep building these movements that Bernie helped to launch.
Thanks, both of you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Reminder, in about 15, 20 minutes, we'll be going live on the ground in Chicago. John Farina doing God's work out there. He has covered over 70, let me repeat, over 70 ceasefire protests in New York, D.C. So he's going to be on the ground. There's a protest going on a few blocks away from the DNC convention outside the Israeli consulate in Chicago. You never know what could happen outside the DNC. I happen to think the police might get a little more ugly tonight. So we'll be live right after this feed ends. Don't do anything. This feed will go right into John's on the ground feed. Before I go to our last interview with Marianne Williamson, by the way, Ryan Grimm couldn't get in the building on time. We'll have him another night this week. We're going to have Marianne Williamson next. I wanted to give a shout out to Jay Ponte. He's a long time activist. He was one of the main activists out in LA during Occupy Wall Street, LA over a decade ago. Then was on the ground floor for Bernie 16. Standing Rock, and many other movements, very instrumental in divestment campaigns to get divest from these big Wall Street banks, to divest from them and hurt them for contributing to fossil fuel pipelines, and authored a great book on a lot of those things I talked about, Occupy Wall Street, Bernie movement, Standing Rock, called Be the Revolution. Real quick, let's take a look.
According to the last IPCC report, the human race has approximately 8 years to get off of fossil fuels and to stop putting excess carbon into the atmosphere. We just don't have time for today's youth to spend the next decade learning how to build big movements, only to get crushed by the corporate state and then apply those lessons, as was the case with Occupy Wall Street, the Bernie Sanders movement, the climate movement, and other movements for peace and justice. We must learn from the successes and failures of the last 10 years. That is why I wrote Be the Revolution, How Occupy Wall Street and the Bernie Sanders movement Reshaped American Politics. This book takes on a lot of important subjects like, why did Trump win? Why did Bernie really lose? What happened at Standing Rock and other mobilization? How do we organize sustainable movements and winning campaigns? What do we do about the rise of global neo-fascism? Be the Revolution shares stories and personal experiences about our efforts at Occupy, shutting down banks with Jane Fonda, creating a divestment movement with Susan Sarandon. Whether you're new to grassroots political organizing, a longtime veteran, or just interested in learning more, Be the Revolution presents unique perspectives and insights into the world we live in and the path forward to a sustainable future. We will be doing leadership trainings for frontline activists and college kids in cities across America. Every copy sold is going to be helping to fund these efforts. We hope to share this theory of change and strategies to help local coalitions work in solidarity. These trainings are designed to offer leadership distinctions that have personally changed my life and have been at the center of every success I've had in the last decade. They also create a deep experience of connection and solidarity in teams and coalitions. The problems we face are great, but history has taught us time and time again that with the right vision, strategy, and solidarity, the 99% can triumph. But it's going to take all of us doing our part.
So definitely check out his book, Be the Revolution. You can pick it up or order it online. I think there's a website too for that. And he's been really helpful over for this event tonight and the next two nights. So shout out to Jay. He has helped. We have a lot of amazing guests coming up tomorrow night, Thursday night. Those guests include, you ready for this? We got Jill Stein, Cornell West, Dr. Richard Wolff, economist and author, Stephen Donziger, environmental and human rights lawyer, Winona LaDuke, author and indigenous activist, Ron Placone, comedian, Greg Palast, investigative journalist. We have Crystal Ball, co-founder and co-host of Breaking Points. Ryan Graham, I think we'll have on another night. Ben Burgess, Jacobin columnist and host of Give Them an Argument. Helen Hahn, comedian, used to be on Silicon Valley, which was a great comedy on HBO. Jasmine Banks, Uncoke My Campus. Jody Evans of Code Pink. A lot of great guests. So I'm really, really excited for that. Tomorrow night we'll be live again, 6 o'clock Eastern, and Thursday night, 6 o'clock Eastern. And who knows? Maybe some other people will want to join as we go. I want to remind you in about, I'd say 15 minutes, we'll be live on the ground. So don't go anywhere after this stream. It should redirect right over to that clip. And also, please, please, please go to watch.thepeoplesmic.live. That's watch.thepeoplesmic.live. That's our custom website for this. You could sign up there so we get your email and other things. And please, 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 if you can, support us, statuscoup.com/join. We, like I said, are one of the only independent outlets, keyword independent outlets, routinely on the ground across America. It's really important, and we could keep doing it. 16 cents a day. 16 cents a day equals $5 a month. I need 300 new signups this week. So far, I think we've gotten 15 to 20 while we've been live. So we obviously need to pick it up. If you can, statuscoup.com/join. Think about what you spend $5 on a day or a week. Probably some of those things are less important than supporting the only independent outlet on the ground across America, covering the stories that corporate media covers up. Let me repeat, the stories that corporate media covers up. They're not covering Flint 10 years later. They're not covering the East Palestine disaster. They're not covering Cop City. They're not covering Amazon labor union organizing around the country, Starbucks workers unionizing across the country, John Deere workers on strike, tenants unions, mutual aid, worker exploitation. They could care less. We stay on it. Statuscoup.com/join. Tell your friends. You don't have to be a progressive to support us. We actually have some conservatives who watch us. They don't agree with me on everything, but they respect the work we do. So please, statuscoup.com/join. Without further ado, let me tee up my interview with Marianne Williamson, ran for president 2020 and 2024, and was unfortunately blacked out in a large part by the mainstream media. Here's my interview with Marianne. Hey, I'm delighted to be joined by Marianne Williamson, ran for president in 2020 and 2024. I believe both times was not treated so democratically, shall we say. Also a renowned author and spiritual advisor. First, I want to start, obviously, there's big theater going on in the United Center in Chicago. Everything is groovy and America's doing great is the kind of branding and marketing. Last night, Monday night, it was the Biden legacy, and obviously President Biden has been putting out the message that the economy is strong, historic recovery, all those things. But I mean, you've been going around the country now for 4 years, basically, running 2 times, not just in New Hampshire and Iowa, but other places. I think what we're trying to do in this 3-day show we're doing is kind of show the discrepancy between the theater and the vibe inside there and what's really happening outside. Can you kind of describe what you've seen over the last few years talking to Americans as a candidate? Because I do not see such a strong economy and I do not see such a strong democracy.
Well, anybody that you would have on this program knows that discrepancy. And you're one of the main articulators of it when you point out what's going on in places like East Palestine, is what's going on in Flint, Michigan, and so forth. Statistics I continue to drive home had to do with millions of people selling their blood plasma, had to do with 39% of Americans saying that they regularly skip meals in order to pay their rent. the fact that 70% of Americans say they live with chronic economic anxiety, the housing crisis, the college loan debt crisis, and so forth. I think the issue, though, is we all know that. You know, anybody who be on this program knows that. Anybody who would be listening knows that. I think the conversation that we need to have is what are we going to do about it, particularly within the electoral sphere. Nobody on either the left or the right. And listen, you hear people say this, you know, when they do those man on the street interviews on the internet that you see, when you hear people who are voting for Trump, that's their reason too. So the entire political class either says it's good or bad, depending on how they think they will fulfill their own political purposes. But the American people are aware that in their own lives, at their own dinner tables, in their own visits to the grocery store, in their own chronic anxiety about paying this month's rent so that they won't be thrown onto the street, the majority, I think, of Americans are clearly aware that the economy is not working for them.
Right. Also, another theme going on, not just at the convention right now, but for years, is this grave threat to democracy that Trump, Republicans face. I think there's validity to a lot of it. However, there's, different interpretations of democracy. Obviously, if you have someone, joking that they want to be a dictator on day one, that they want to weaponize their DOJ to go after opponents, that is a threat to democracy. But I want to read this quote from Ron Klain, the president's longtime advisor. He actually was Al Gore's chief lawyer during the recount debacle a quarter century ago. But he told the New York Times, I think it was unfortunate because I think that the president had won the nomination fair and square. 14 million people had voted for him and the vice president as vice president. I do think, the president was pushed by public calls from elected officials for him to drop out, from donors calling him to drop out. I don't know about you, but we could go back to 2016. I'm not sure that was so fair and square. We know what came out, how the DNC's full body was on the scale against Bernie Sanders. We know in 2020, Bernie Sanders, had a lot of momentum. MSNBC was freaking out that he was going to be the nominee. And then there was this, shadow effort to basically get everyone to drop out. The media did a pep rally for 3 days to support Biden. And then this time, they were not subtle. They just said, we are not going to have a primary. We are not going to have debates. So, again, I'm not saying Trump's not a threat, but it doesn't really seem like we actually have a democratic process at all if Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, certain donors don't want us to have one. And you've been at the center of that, particularly this cycle.
There are two ways of looking at politics. One is that the end justifies the means. And that's clearly what certain forces are saying. Well, we're suppressing democracy here, but the threat to democracy embodied by Donald Trump is so great that it's justified. And then there's a line from Mahatma Gandhi where he said that the end is inherent in the means. If you take a nonviolent political view, then you recognize that the process is as important as the goal and ultimately determines it. So what you just described is plain for everybody to see now. They chose Hillary instead of Bernie. Then they chose Joe. Then they chose Joe again. Then they chose Kamala. We've been put in this double bind where we're all so afraid of doing anything that might reduce our power in resisting the authoritarianism and neo-fascism represented by Donald Trump, that we are not standing up with spine and with courage and calling the Democratic Party on what it needs to be called on, or else all that we're doing is just kicking the problem down the road. And once again, we're back into the same loop, Jordan. Everything that you just said, who on this program or listening to this program doesn't know that now? What we need to be discussing is what are we going to do about it? And that's where I feel that the left is falling short.
Right. And, it's interesting, too, because we have journalists. I remember they were saying Biden doesn't face any credible primary threats or serious primary threats. When you were running, I think you're credible. frankly, more credible than Mayor Pete was. He was a small town mayor. I mean, you were a major author, success, entrepreneur. And I don't see why journalists get to dictate who's credible. Also, if they would have had a debate, I'm sure you have thoughts, even one debate where President Biden had to debate you, RFK Jr. when he was running. I mean, you might be the nominee right now based on what we saw.
Making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
So it sure seems that most of the American people are being force-fed who are the legitimate or credible candidates they can consider, while it being blacked out anyone else, because, I mean, aside from News Nation podcasts, I mean, you were not really welcome on mainstream outlets during this primary.
So he who controls the narrative controls the world. And what's happening today is that people who have the money, people who have the power, people who have the media, but then also, we'll shelve this for a moment, then I want to get back to it. Let's look at how the left conspired with this. So if you use words like she's not credible, she's not qualified, she's a crystal lady, or outright lies, she told AIDS patients not to take their medicine, this complete perversion of my career, of my personality. The issue, though, is not just that they do that, but let's look at how so many people on the left bought it too. You know, the reason the left is fractured, Jordan, is because there is no solidarity of goal. We like to use the word solidarity. Where the unity needs to be is what's the goal here? And the goal of any kind of a progressive movement, or any kind of a political movement actually, is actually having an effect in people's lives. So, you know, we've heard for a long time, inside-outside strategy. Great, I'm all for it. We need that. Because at first the assumption was it can't just be on the inside, it also has to be on the outside. Now it's so much on the outside, but ignoring things that are happening on the inside. What's happening on the inside is electoral politics. It's got to be both and. You know, in any kind of political change, there are three main steps. There's the provocateur, and the left definitely has the provocateurs. Then the activists, the left has the activists, and then the politicians. And this is where the left, the modern left, has lost its spine. You have to, first of all, you have to support people who are running on progressive politics. It can't be, I mean, I could not even believe they're like, I don't like her. Are you kidding? You think every conservative likes Josh Hawley? Do you think every conservative likes Ted Cruz? No, what they like is the idea of an America dominated by their conservative vision. And so at this point, this is what I mean about we have to decide what we're going to do about it. And I believe that, I hope that the next time somebody runs on a genuinely progressive platform, which if supported, in my case, was definitely erased and visibilized by many of the mainstream media that you're talking about, and certainly, the political media industrial complex. But also I think that I hope that the left will begin to ask itself more serious questions about putting front and center the idea of actually supporting progressive candidates in a way that is not now. Because it's all about leverage to me. It's all about the fact that could we support someone in such a way that Medicare for all could not be ignored? Could we support someone in such a way that an economic Bill of Rights has to be on the table? Could we support someone in such a way that economic justice is a normalized conversation that cannot be peripheralized? What are you going after here? We're going after power? And that's what intrigues me. And I hope that the left will...
Let me follow up on that, because one thing that I've seen is, I mean, you tap into people's spirit and people's anger and psychology. Obviously, people that were hardcore, burners in 2016, that fracturing was a lot of those folks just taking their ball and going home in a way. In some cases, understandably angry, upset, because they, were promised a political revolution, and then Biden won. And a lot of those squad members who galvanized and excited people kind of went along to go along. Bernie obviously chose to, work with Biden. I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. However, there were a lot of people rightly frustrated. But where I see the issue is, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people focus on, no, to hell with it. We're not doing it within the Democratic Party. We're going to build a third party. I don't think it's either or, but as I always said when people were putting their foot down, only third party, if you think it's rigged in the Democratic Party, what do you think they're going to do to third parties? We're already seeing it. Cornel West was just thrown off the ballot in Michigan over a filing discrepancy. Look what they did to Matthew Hoh with the Green Party in North Carolina. Look what, obviously the media blackout with Jill Stein, among others. So it's not such an easier path to build a third party. The issue is corruption. And personally, for me, as we're watching this theater go on in the United Center right now, and I want to get to Obama's speech next, the left has to come together. And it doesn't necessarily have to be one strategy within the Democratic Party or the third party, but this infighting if we're going to fight for the next 10 years, I'll tell you, Pelosi likes that. Schumer likes that. Jamie Dimon, rumored to be possibly Trump's Treasury Secretary. They love if we're fighting with each other. When the bottom line is, your thoughts, there's going to be rigging and major obstacles, whether you're doing it through the Democratic Party or third party.
It's not just about coming together. It's about being more psychologically and politically mature and astute and strategic. What you're saying is so true. What they did to the ballot on the ballot issue with me, with Dean Phillips and so forth, look what they're doing to Bobby Kennedy. Look what they're doing to Jill. Look how they withheld the money from Jill that she had earned. Look what they're doing to Cornell and so forth. And also this projection that if we go third party, it's all going to be so pure, as though third party candidacies, there are never any corruption issues. No, it's about where can we possibly make a difference? It's both and. So it's not like, no, I'm going, I mean, listen, you can help somebody put forward a progressive vision in the Democratic Party and then not vote for that person in the general. This has to do with what's your real goal here. Now, as far as I'm frustrated is concerned, my feeling about that? Read a little history. Read about the abolitionists. Read about the women's suffragists. Read about the early labor organizers. Read about the civil rights movement. Do you think they said, well, we didn't get our way and we really tried and we 2 electoral seasons. Are you kidding? Are you kidding me? No, there's a maturation process psychologically that needs to occur here. You don't stop. This is what they want. Like you said, it makes Nancy Pelosi happy. The left is so easy to play. The left is so easy to exhaust. And if all we're running on is adrenaline, then it's going to
Do you feel in a way, because I've heard people respond to that message from you, that's very condescending. I'm working paycheck to paycheck. I'm broke. I can't pay my medical bills, and you're telling me to grow up. Do you feel in a way that could be perceived as condescending, even if, clearly
I'm not saying give $5. I'm saying don't repeat lies so casually on the internet. Have some respect. Don't be don't repeat lies on the internet. That alone would help. It's not just about money.
You're talking about like the YouTube industrial complex, former lefty hosts that kind of.
Well, the whole online left. Having been at the effect of, online bullying of teenagers is bad. Online bullying of adults isn't that much better. Yeah, it's not condescending. Anything I say is condescending. How dare she? That's kind of what I mean, though, Jordan. So nobody gets
You're telling people toughen up. Obviously, those movements did not get their way right away.
Well, not only that, I think every system, we have to look at ourselves. The left is very good at pointing out other people, you this, you that. What about looking at ourselves as a movement? Given the fact, if you look at abolition was the response to slavery. Women's suffrage was a response to the systematic oppression of women. Organized labor was the response to the Gilded Age, and civil rights movement was the response to the segregation. Those social justice movements, let's claim them. We sometimes are so busy pointing out what America's done wrong, America's problems, that we're not thinking the way we might about what were the characterological and strategic aspects of the problem solvers. And that's that they kept going. They kept going, and they didn't spend all their time criticizing one another. Right. So at this point, and this is the message that I was giving around the country for the last year and a half, what I would say to people is that America has a story. And that in 1776, some very brave men, and I say brave because if the British had won the war, they would have been hanged as traitors against the King of England. They signed a document that infused the founding of a nation in a way that had never been done before, with ideals of liberty and freedom and the possibility of human self-actualization within a political and economic system such as that never existed before. At the same time, 41 of them were slave owners. That's it. That's the story of America. It has been with us from the beginning. It's our national DNA. It's baked into the cake. We're both and. We have always been both and. We have been in every generation, reiterates it, some more dramatically than others. But the main point being no differently than in ours. People who are willing to struggle and sacrifice and sometimes have even died for the actualization of those ideals, and others, forces who for their own ideological and financial purposes have been willing to do whatever it took, even to the greatest violence and atrocities, to make sure that those ideals were in fact not actualized. But the abolitionists pushed it back. The women's suffragists pushed it back. Early labor pushed it back. And civil rights movement pushed it back. It's our turn now. Today, it's not one institution. It's an economic paradigm, actually. It's a way of thinking that puts corporate profits before safety, health, and well-being of the American people. It's the fact that there's this matrix of corporate overlords, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, big food, big chemical, big ag, gun manufacturers, big oil and defense contractors. And at this point, their short-term profits are our organizing principle in the society. They've turned our government into legalized bribery. They have made their profits our bottom line instead of democracy and humanitarian values. And what I saw, and there were people in my audiences who were on the right as well as the left. Look, you had a lot of Trumpsters on the UAW picket line. His anti-corporate message. People on the right hear it too. That's all we should be thinking about. How to move it forward, how to move it forward, how to move it forward. And anytime in my life, it's been about founding nonprofits, it's been about hosting conferences, it's been about when I did this summit of progressive candidates, just do what you can, do what you can. And we are so easily distracted. And that's the unity of purpose to me.
The full interview with Marianne will be posted later this week. We're also going to have longer interviews posted later this week with some of our guests. We are about to go out on the streets with John Farina in Chicago, so do not go anywhere. Thank you so much, Amzi behind the camera, helping us on tech, Colin behind the camera, helping us on tech, Jay helping to put this together. Tomorrow, don't forget, huge show. Going to have Jill Stein, going to have Shama Sawant, Stephen Donziger, Crystal Ball, Ben Burgess, Winona LaDuke, among others. And Thursday, we're going to have Cornell West, Greg Palast, Richard Wolf, among others, and more on the ground coverage. Please, please sign up. statuscoup.com/join. Try to get 300 new paying members this month. You could support us for $5 a month. That's 16 cents a day. We are off to Chicago on the ground. Don't go anywhere. This stream will go right into that. John Farina on the ground covering ceasefire, pro-Palestine protests outside the DNC.